joke about this and say, oh, gee, my video only got 5 views. It's like, wait a minute, do you spend 20 minutes on the phone with somebody and hang up and say, dang it, I was only talking to one person?
What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, and welcome back to the show. This is going to be a good one. We're going to talk about a lot. We're going to talk about somebody that's traveled to 37 different countries. We're going to talk about the wisdom they've gained from that. We're also going to talk about how you can use events and old school fundamentals to build your business, to build your wealth, and to build the wisdom that will carry you through the rest of your life. We're also going to talk about how major things can happen in your life, like for him, 2 torn or popped, or however you want to say it, Achilles tendons. Now look that up. It's one of the worst tendons you can have pop. It's like a rubber band, goes, career over, whatever you're doing. Well, we're going to dive into a lot of these topics today. So folks, you're going to want to sit back, grab the popcorn, and get ready, because today's episode is going to be amazing. Now, before we get into this, folks, I always like to open this up with something that you all know. You're here for a reason. Maybe you want to learn something. Maybe you just want some entertainment. Great. You're going to get all of that. But you see, the problem is if you're here to learn something, it's not the knowledge that you're going to get today that's going to help you. That's worthless. It's worthless until you apply the knowledge. Now, once that application is done of what you learn and you start using that, that's when your life changes. So I want to always start off by giving you something. I always talk about giving. And if you give down the line, you will get it back, but you have to start with the give. So I want to give you all something for free. And I don't care what you want, but I've got 3 things you can have, 3 books. Okay. Private Money Guide, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, and a book on how to get all the money back for every car you buy, drive, and own. But now let's talk about applying what I just said. You want those books. So to get them, you have to take action. You have to go to chrisnaugle.com and go to the book section, or just scroll down with 3 index finger swipes and you can grab the books for free. You just pay the shipping and handling, but the books will show up at your door. Now, take that exact thing you just heard me offer you and apply that to what you're going to get today from our guest. So our guest is coming in from Canada, and I think this is going to be wild because we're in the United States here. They're in Canada. There's not a whole lot different, and these principles work in both countries. And I want to make sure that you apply this. So let's bring Chris on. Chris, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And now Millionaire is your last name, right? Chris Millionaire. Did I nail that?
Yeah, you got it.
All right, I got it right. So I always struggle a little with names. I asked him right before we went on how he says it, and I just wanted to make sure I nailed it. So folks, I said that name twice so that it starts to sink in, and I'm going to say it a few more times because I want you to follow him. I want you to look him up and go on all the social media sites and watch what he teaches, because it's something you're going to need. So with that, Chris, let's just dive a little bit into what you do today. So we'll talk a little bit about what you do today, but then I want to take the DeLorean back in time, and I want to talk a little bit about how this all started to happen.
Sure. So my story kind of started when I was 19 years old. I moved 10 hours away from home to a new city as a young kid with no formal post-secondary education. I grew up in a trades family, and I was the black sheep of the family. I was the only non-mechanically inclined of 5 siblings. There's 5 of us. I have 4 siblings. I didn't know how to use a wrench. I'm not exaggerating. It was terrible. I was the incompetent one when I graduated from high school. And so for me to move away from home and start a life for myself from scratch was a daunting task, I guess you could say. And I learned so many lessons early on there. I had a disposable car that was, soon disposed of. I got in an accident and it was soon gone. I literally had the clothes on my back, and it was nice enough that my long lost cousin at the time let me in. And so I lived there for about 6 months to sort of get up on my feet. But, prior to that, I kind of learned, what I learned from knocking on doors, essentially, or cold calling the newspaper, looking for a place to live with literally no job, door knocking and cold calling the newspaper, because this was 2008, looking for a place to work, not knowing at the time that was the beginning of my sales career, learning how to sell, in essence, but I didn't have like, I'm a very introverted and shy person naturally. And like I said, growing up in a trades family, it wasn't something that was, common knowledge, so to speak. And, but somewhere along the way, I met a girl. And so this girl, she had her life together. Okay. She's a farmer's daughter, and she had 2 university degrees, full-time job as a flight attendant. And she kind of traveled all over the place, and she owned her own place. And here I am, first year sheet metal worker, essentially a laborer, 20-year-old kid, selling her on this dream. And so she was the first person in my life to ever, first of all, believe it when I was saying it. And second of all, to take it one step further, you speak about taking action. She took me to the bookstore. And of course, I was a bit of a nerd growing up, so I loved reading, but I was honestly made fun of, so I stopped reading. But she took me to the bookstore, and she said, "We're not leaving until you buy a business book." And I kind of felt weird, but that was a pivotal moment in my story, because we walked out that day with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was, it was the book that sort of led to all of the rest of the books. And I pretty much read close to, I would say, like a book a week kind of ever since then. But like you said, I broke my Achilles tendon. So I was a sheet metal worker, partway through this, and I broke my Achilles tendon. That's an 8-month recovery. And it was funny because I got back to work again after 8 months, and I was celebrating after work, having a beer, at buddy's place, in the garage. And I was jumping around, showing him how strong I was with my other leg. And I'm going to be snowboarding again right away. This is awesome. And then I busted my other Achilles tendon. And so there goes another 8 months. And so the first 8 months, my wife, I guess my girlfriend at the time, Emily, she was really supportive. But then that second 8 months, I kind of had to keep things together. And that's when I bought my real estate textbooks, to become a real estate agent. And so, moving forward with that, I was, like I said, very, very nervous and honestly somewhat awkward. It was a huge learning curve, getting into real estate. But I took the Dale Carnegie public speaking course, and it's been a journey. It's been an adventure, just kind of getting to know the ropes, and each step of the way has been definitely a lot of a big, wow, growth. It's been nothing but growth since then. So it's hard to look back and think feels like 5 lifetimes ago already.
Yeah, so it's amazing how fast time goes by and how many things can change. 2 Achilles tendons. So I've never heard that before. That's not exactly an easy one to pop. And you're just jumping around on your leg and it just let loose.
That was the second one. The first one, I was playing volleyball. So I was playing competitive volleyball, recreational volleyball, but I used to play competitive volleyball. And I was literally just backpedaling off the net. And then when I switched directions, that was it.
Now, I know this is probably way off topic, but I've talked to other people, because in snowboarding, this happens, and it happened a lot more back in the day with the boots we used to wear. The new ones are pretty good about protecting you. But what does it feel like when your Achilles tendon, you call it break, I call it pop, but what does that feel like? Because that's a tendon that goes all the way up, your leg, your calf, and it connects down to your foot. So that's a long, tightly strung tendon. I mean, does it feel like a firecracker goes off in your foot? It's
like somebody grabs a baseball bat and smashes you right in the back of the leg, to be honest. So the rupture itself hurts, but then afterwards, it's not a very painful injury. It's a tendon. It was hanging on by a thread, but it was just it just takes forever to heal a tendon. It's not like a bone or a muscle. It takes forever. And because it takes forever, you lose all the muscle in your leg, and then you got to get balanced again and do rehab. And it's a challenge.
And it's that one tendon that your leg doesn't work without that, at all. You can't even walk on it, right?
Yeah, you kind of have to walk bow-legged, but but then it's crutches, and then you got to get a boot, and then it starts with they cast it or they do surgery, and then you got to slowly over time take wedges out of your boot. so you can stretch it back to normal. And then once it's strong enough, then you got to start, gaining your muscle back. So it was definitely a process for sure.
Man, it does not sound fun. So let's dive a little bit into, where you kind of landed. Dale Carnegie, to speak, and then, you got your real estate license, but, and don't think I'm too much of a jerk for saying this, but real estate agents, they're a dime a dozen. Like literally, like I can't trip and not fall into a real estate agent today. And sometimes I look at that and I'm just like, what's special about being a real estate agent? Everybody and their brother, rushed into this space during the pandemic. Everybody thought, I'm going to make all this money being a real estate agent. You flood the market with, real estate salespeople all chasing the same market share. And it just to me has gotten to be from the outside looking in, a very dirty business, and one that like, I don't have a ton of respect for, but like, you're in it. So like, how do you see the industry today as compared to how it was when you got into it?
Yeah. It's, what do they say? Used car salespeople, real estate agents, and politicians. We all kind of fall into the same category there somehow.
That's probably about right.
But the funny thing is I could turn it totally back and say the same sort of applies, I think, with financial advisors. Now, I know you're not 100%. A financial advisor, so to speak, but what happens is, the 80-20 principle, right? So like on one hand, it's saturated and competitive, but on the other hand, they set the bar pretty low. Performance-based jobs, 100% commission income, it's as long as you show up, learn, and apply yourself for at least 40 hours a week, you're going to find yourself in the top 20%. The people that fall into the rest, they don't have any discipline. They're not growth oriented. They don't follow a strict schedule. It's kind of, and then if you don't want to be one of those people, then it's really just as simple as finding somebody who's already doing what it is that you want to do and learn from them, and then just work on whatever's the next step for you. Because, I look at what you're doing. You're obviously doing some amazing things, but I know that I can learn a lot from you. But I'm not going to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour overnight. It's like, okay, here's where I am. What's the next step? Because like what you said, taking action, it's like, it doesn't really matter what this, like ClickFunnels, for example. Well, that's a pretty elaborate system that he uses. And I'd love to apply that in my business. But what's the next step look like? Right. So it's like, you're not going to have an elaborate system overnight. But if you take that next step in that direction, you'll eventually have something that will work well for you and in that direction. Right. At least that's my way of thinking.
No, that's a great way to think. I mean, you're absolutely right. So like, what I do or what you do, people can look at it and say, oh, wow, that's complicated. But then it's really not complicated if you break it down into, well, here's your very next step. First, do this. Then after that's done, here's the next step. Here's the next step. Here's the next step. And it's even going back to, the times of Babylon. I mean, if you think about wealth, it's always been the same. To build wealth has always been identical back then and now. Okay, maybe the denomination was different. They use gold and silver and metals. Today we use paper, worthless fiat money. But it's all the same if you take the steps. We call them the laws of wealth. And back in the day, there were the laws of gold, as, the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, would outline. And if you really just apply those steps, first step, save 10% of what you earn. Second step, now that you've saved it, make that money go to work for you. Third step, protect that wealth by investing in things you know, like, and understand. Fourth step, don't be greedy, because if you have unrealistic return expectations, your money will flee you. Fifth step, solve other people's problems and give. And then sixth step, create a legacy. You notice, like, it's so simple, 6 steps. And if you do those, your life will be filled with wealth. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So kind of like what you said, but each one of those steps has a different interpretation for everybody. So they have to formulate one of those laws or one of those steps in their own way that applies to their own life and their own circumstances. And I think that's where people get off the rails, because I think they want to think that they're a special, unique snowflake. Just, you're not, but your situation is unique to you. So your situation needs to then fit the model, fit the steps. Not the steps need to fit your situation. And that's where people, I think, in today's society have kind of gotten it off to the wrong path. And even in real estate, I would even say, I mean, I've spent a lot of time doing real estate deals. My wife is a realtor. She just did it for just our business. So I see both sides, but you're absolutely correct. I think a lot of people in today's world, when they're trying to sell their house, they think that the realtor should adopt to their situation, when no, they should adopt to what the realtor or the broker says they should do. Here's step one. These are the things you need to do. Your house is a mess. Clean it up, stage it, get it ready. We're going to get more money. And the person says, well, I can't, I have 4 kids and blah, blah, blah. You're just going to have to list it as it is, as if like, okay, great. I'll list it as it is. And guess what you're going to get? 20% less than what you could get. I'm just making numbers up. But you see, like, it's the same interpretation with money. People want the laws to apply to their situation when their situation needs to apply to the laws. Identical.
And to add to what you're saying is the landscape changes. The principles don't change. So that's where, the ability to, I heard this one time, learn, unlearn, and relearn, especially with, where things are going right now. You just think about in our lifetime, but now, it's 10 times faster today for the kids that are coming into the workforce. It's absolutely wild and phenomenal to see what's going to happen over the next 10 years, just with technology and everything else, exponential, especially with AI and all these different things. But even today, and look at generations demographically, and like who's applying social media in their business and who isn't, and like back to the idea of one step at a time, what you still need to adopt a habit. It's kind of like this too. I realized if I can free up an extra hour a day to do something different based on, technology or that spare hour I have now is 10 times more valuable because of the tools I have access to, we still have the same problems. We still have to manage our priorities so that we're working on, the things that are most important, and we have to restructure our day in a way that helps us, lead in a direction we want. But it is exciting and inspiring to see, what we can do now with the tools and technology we have access to, but we still have the same problems. So on one hand, we've got, AI or social media as an example, but it doesn't solve all of our problems. You still have to have good habits. You still have to, work one step at a time. But I honestly do think, though, that people that apply technology, it's not because it's not a get rich quick thing, but it's a don't get left behind thing, to a certain extent too. Like you look at social media, realtors that aren't using social media today. Well, how long did it take social media become mainstream? And if you're just getting into it now, it's just like you should be, but I mean, you're definitely late to the table. Doesn't mean you can't be effective and efficient with it, but it's, and then what a lot of people also do is they overlook it, or they take it for granted, or they say, well, that doesn't apply to me. But I mean, everybody has a unique approach, but I do think that there's certain things that, you don't want to miss the boat.
Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action, like so many others have, by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up.
Well, Chris, let's go back to what you just said with, you'd gotten off by saying, step one. So if let's take the old with the new, right? The new is social media, the old days where things were done differently, but really they weren't. So how do we bring the old school fundamental principles into the new era of AI and social media and digital marketing? How do we blend them? And I know this is something you've done. So let's tell the audience a little bit about like step one. If we want to bring the old school fundamentals today with the new school social media AI, what is step one?
Yeah, I learned from Mike Ferry, who was one of the original sales trainers in real estate. And the basic sales is, prospects equals appointments and appointments equals money. It's like talk to people, go on appointments, follow through. That's really as simple as it gets. And so with social media, it's so easy to get caught up in the newsfeed, especially with, short form content like TikTok, Instagram Reels, all this type of stuff. And it's like, on one hand, it's the most powerful tool that we've had access to, which is our ability to broadcast to the masses, but on the same sense, it could easily just become a mind numbing scrolling the newsfeed in circles. And so you have to create good habits based around that. But ultimately, you still have to talk to people. It's like people will accept 5,000, friends on Facebook, but never talk to any of them on Facebook Messenger. It's like, well, you just sort of watch what they're up to based on whatever the algorithm feeds you that day. And so you still have to be organized and conscious about keeping in touch with the people that you know well, identifying who those people are, and having a system for keeping in touch with them, and utilize social media as one method of contact. But I still think that it's not the only method of contact. I joke about this and say, oh, gee, my video only got 5 views. It's like, wait a minute, do you spend 20 minutes on the phone with somebody and hang up and say, dang it, I was only talking to one person? No, it's just one method of contact. And same thing, if you put an Instagram reel out there and you only got 50 views or 80 views, it's like, what would happen if we're on this podcast right now, but let's just say we're on your computer, same as now, 70 people walked into your office right now. Would you be overwhelmed? Be like, oh my goodness, 70 people. So it's just like, we take for granted the tools that we have access to. And it's just like, what really matters is that one next person. Same thing with one step at a time. Well, how do you sell 100 houses a year? Or how do you make $1 million a year? One person at a time. Help one person at a time. And then if you get good at it and you start to leverage some of the tools so that you can, maybe systematize what you do a little bit more, then great. But it still all starts with that one person or whoever's in front of you. And if you apply that to social media, I think that, it can be very simple. So like what you're doing on social media is amazing. What I see that you're doing is, at least. But you don't have to have a massive following in order to apply social media extremely effectively. And that's what I tell my teammates. So let's say you keep it basic sales fundamentals in real estate. Okay. If you keep in touch with 300 people as an example, then you should be able to get a 10% return from that group, which is 30 transactions per year, because everybody knows at least 50 people, and people will buy or sell on average once every 7 years based on, death in the family, a divorce, a growing family, job transfer, whatever the reason is. And so if you just keep in touch with 300 people, no matter what's happening in the market, you're going to get that same result. But now if you use social media as one method of contact, you can cross-check that group of people on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. You can have a custom email, marketing strategy and a mass email marketing strategy, as well as phone them once or twice a year, host an in-person client event once a year or twice a year, and just maybe text message them once a year. So you mix all that together, you're going to be front of mind. They're going to say, oh my goodness, I see Chris everywhere. And you don't have, if you have 300 people in your sphere of influence, you only have 500 followers on each platform. Do you really need any more than that? Depends on what your goals are, of course. But to me, that's very basic. You're just layering in social media to that.
Yeah, I want to comment on that. And I pulled up an important saying that I want to open this up, because I think in today's world, and I have a lot of followers and subscribers, over 1 million, across the channels. But I think a lot of people think, oh, to be successful, I have to have lots of followers. And that is wrong. And people actually go out there and then they buy followers. And let me read you this. This is from a movie that all of you should have watched. And if you're too young and haven't seen this, please watch this. It's called Fight Club. Tyler Durden was one of the main characters in that movie. And it was played by Brad Pitt. And well, actually, depending on how you look at it, they're both one and the same. But he said this: we work jobs we hate to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. When you buy followers, you are literally spending money to get people that you don't need to impress the people you don't like. So, you might be buying followers to get 100,000 followers on Instagram, let's just say. That's 100,000 people you don't need and 100,000 people that you don't like and that will more than likely never buy from you. But then let's just say you spend your time and energy to get 100, not 100,000, but 100 of the right people, people that you do like, people that do think the same as you, people that you can influence and learn from or have them learn from you. Those 100 people are worth more than 1 million followers. Now, I know some of you are like, well, you can't monetize 100 people and, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. Stop. What is your goal you're trying to do? You trying to be a world famous influencer? Well, then get yourself a TV show. Then go do something stupid that lands you on the news tonight that gets you in front of millions of views. Like, stop thinking that you need a ton of people. I'll tell you, I know a couple coaches, I'm not really in the coaching space, but I know some coaches, and I looked at this one that makes tons of money, millions of dollars a year. And I looked at their social media, just their Instagram, and they had like 300 people. And I know this person. So I went to him and I said, like, I don't mean to pick on you. You're not old, but you have 300 people on Instagram. Like, do you not put any time into it? It looks like you're posting all the time. He said, no. He said, I know all those 300 people. I've done business with most of them. And therefore, why do I need more? If I don't need more people, why would I strive to have more people? More people create more stress in my life. More people take more time from my family and from me. I don't want more people. I want the right people. And that landed for me because, I might have millions of followers, but like literally like it's a fraction of a percent that I actually end up doing business with, which yes, is a lot of people, but it's taken me the better part of a decade to get there. People want to do that in a year. They want to open an account, a TikTok account. I want 1 million followers at the end of this month. That's not the goal. The goal is to solve people's problems. And when you solve people's problems, you get paid to do that in one way or the other. And if you just start focusing on that, stop focusing on the glory of impressing people you don't like and you don't need, Tyler Durden, then you'll be a lot more successful. You'll be a lot more happy, and you won't be always chasing this false reality that you're creating in your mind, because that's all it is. It's just a made up fantasy world. I think people have lost reality of what their dreams and goals really are. And they've allowed other people's dreams and goals to become theirs because they spend too much time living behind a screen and watching this fantasy world that really isn't even real on the other side.
But you know what is too is people use that as an excuse not to follow through with an activity. So because I don't have 200,000 followers and I likely never will, it's not worth it for me. And I'm not one of those people. It's like, no, wait a minute.
I hear that all the time.
See what I'm saying? Like back to the basics, A plus B equals C. That's why I'm a numbers guy. I'm an analytical thinker. As soon as I have systems, like for example, I don't care what the ratio is, as long as there is a ratio. And then I know I can follow through and get XYZ results. And then I can base my schedule around that. And then I can improve upon that over time. It's like, but I don't get every listing appointment I go on. It's like, well, every prospect I talk to doesn't turn into a sale. It's like, well, wait a minute. What is the ratio and how can I improve upon it? It's like simple, basic, try something for 3 months and then look back and see how well it worked and then modify it or change it. But stick with it long enough to find a ratio, right? It's like, I went door knocking one time and I didn't get any listings from it. So door knocking doesn't work. It's like, well, if you look at Ricky Carruth, he's one of the biggest influencers, on Instagram in a real estate space. And that's basically all he does is like cold call and door knock. And like, he's doing extremely well. It's just like social media. So here's another thing, lead generation in general. I think social media is one element and you need to fit it with what your approach is, but it's not going to be the primary approach for everybody. I think that you need to utilize it to stay relevant to a certain extent. But like, I think the way you should do is find something that works for you and get good at it too. Because the more options you have, and that's the problem too with social media, the internet, but now also with AI. It's like, okay, this is a great tool, but now I have too many options and I can't make a decision. It's like I like Think and Grow Rich. They have an entire chapter written on decisions. And then when I read that book, I was just like, man, so what my first takeaway from reading that book was, wait a minute, if I'm persistent and I learn how to make decisions, I can be rich. It's just like, that's how simple it can be sometimes. Right. But it's just like that is the truth. back to the basics, your ability to make decisions is going to help you determine your lot in life. Well, yeah, you actually have to make a decision, right? And life is really just a series of decisions. At any one period of time, you could make a bad decision, but I think making a decision is better than not making a decision, right? And so, like AI, for example, you can ask this robot to spit out almost anything that you could think of. And it's like, well, what do I do with it? Well, what should I ask it? Right. And so you have to, your ability to think has never been more valuable than it is today. Because tools like AI and social media, they cut out so much of the mundane that really you can just be creative. Like, how exciting is that? Never mind making more money. How about just being more creative and having more fun at work because we have access to things that can help cut out the drudgery in our day.
I got to tell a story, and it comes from one of my mentors, now a dear friend of mine. And he wrote a book with the Napoleon Hill Foundation called 3 Feet from Gold. And I think this sums up the problem with a lot of people. And the story, I'm going to butcher it, but the stories, in the book is all about a gold, he was a guy that mined and, was a gold digger, I guess is what you'd say, but don't think the wrong gold digger. And he knew exactly where the gold was. He'd done all the research. He was a pretty wealthy man, and he had it all plotted out, knew exactly where the gold was. Now, all of you listening to this right now, listening to what Chris is saying, you all in a roundabout way know exactly where the goal is and what you do. For Chris, the goal is, see more people, list more properties, sell more properties, consistent, persistent action. Like, he knows where the gold is. And I know all of you do too. Well, this gold digger knew exactly where the gold was. And he set up his old elaborate setup, had all the best tools, the best equipment, the best of everything. And he started digging for gold. And he was digging and digging, and days went by and weeks went by. And every single week, a boy pushing or pulling a cart would come by, and he had supplies. He'd have just general supplies that you'd need to dig for gold. And, every day the boy watched this very well-known, very successful gold digger digging for this gold. And, this gold digger would always tell him, son, I'm going to strike rich here. I'm going to have so much money. I'm going to knock it out of the park. So every day this boy saw this and believed every word of it. Months turned into years. And this gold digger was starting to get tired, was starting to think that maybe there isn't gold here. Maybe I've made a mistake. And one day that boy pulling the cart comes by, same as he always does. And the gold digger is just tired. He's mad. He's upset. He's frustrated. And the boy, sees this and says, can I help you with anything? And the gold digger says, yeah, you want to buy all this? I'm done. There's no gold here. You can have it all for whatever money's in your pocket. So the boy from his collections that day pulls the money out and knows no better, but knows that man said there's gold here, and he's a smart man. Hands him the money. The gold digger literally says, it's yours. Takes off, stamps out of there, never to come back. That boy gets down with just basic materials, basic shovel, and starts digging. Within 1 week, that boy strikes gold, because what he found is that the gold was 3 feet lower than where the man was at that time. You see, the moral of the story is we're all 3 feet from gold. The question is can we make it? Are we going to finish the race? Are we going to get to the end, the finish line? And the finish line is always 3 feet, always. Now, your view or perception of what 3 feet is different than mine, is different than Chris's, is different than everybody's. This boy took over, had nothing, and then hit one of the largest gold veins there ever was at that time. And it was 3 feet from where that brilliant, wealthy gold digger had been digging. It was there. It was there all along. He just didn't finish the race. I mean, in the book finishes off as, are you 3 feet from gold? And Chris, what you said is exactly that. Everybody's chasing get rich quick. Everybody wants to get rich quick. And the people that are chasing get rich quick, just use crypto. They're now broke. Crypto bottomed out again today. Like, everybody that's chasing that get rich quick thing, the story's always the same. The next step is you're broke. But it's the people that put the time in, the people that go consistently and persistently at what their trade is, what they know, what they're good at, and what they actually like doing. they're the ones that become wildly successful. They're the ones we read books about. They're the ones that we see on social media that are, have millions of followers. It's because they were consistent and persistent, but we never stop to think what that person went through to get there. Nobody ever asks me, oh my God, how'd you get, 300, I don't even know where I'm at, but 350 or 360,000 followers on Instagram. They just think that miraculously people just like me and all of a sudden wanted to follow me. They didn't know that I've been at this for 10 years, putting up posts every day, making sure that there's 100 posts every single day out. You know how much work that is? But nobody wants to look at the work. They just want to look at, oh, wow, look at you. Lucky you. No. There's no luck. Luck doesn't even exist. It follows opportunity. The opportunity was created by me and everybody else that has big followings. I want you to hone in on that one word, creation, because you want to know the difference between success and failure? It's that word. Creation. Failure lies just on the other side of conforming. You want to fail? You want to be certain to fail? Conform to other people's failed realities. Conform to other people's failed dreams and failed financial futures. Don't take advice from people that are not where you want to be. And if you do, well, that's your reality. You're now going to conform to your own failed life, failed financial freedom, and failed journey, whatever you want to call it. Sorry, I didn't mean to occupy that, but that is so powerful to what you said.
It's true. And, find people say, if you work hard enough for somewhere between 10 to 20 years, eventually you'll be an overnight success.
It's true.
And it is true. And, but I think people just need to wrap their head around that it really is the repetitious boredom that creates success. But at the same time, you do have to get better. You do have to, analyze whether it's working or not, right? You have to be somewhat strategic. But I think staying the course is half the battle for most people. Definitely shiny object syndrome.
100%. So let's transition a little bit. You've had a ton of success with events, but when we say the word events, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I could never speak. People fear speaking more than they fear death, which I'll never understand being a speaker, but I was scared the first couple of times. So can we just define how you've scaled your business through events and how that progression has happened?
Yeah. So basically, I've always sort of done client events, for my real estate sales business. But 3 years ago, I joined eXp Realty, and we have an opportunity to help grow our team. To build a brokerage within a brokerage, so to speak, without being a broker, which is pretty unique. It's pretty cool. And what I decided to do was start hosting events. And what you're saying is also, I think, important, because a lot of people, when they think of an event, they think of maybe speaking in front of 300 people. Most of the events that we've done are like 10 to 15 people that come to these events. And I live in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in Canada, which is like the middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan frozen prairies, Canadian frozen prairies, right? Like literally middle of nowhere. Sure, our city is 230,000 people, but there's only 600 agents in town. So imagine you live in a town of 600 people, and those are all the potential prospects you could work with. And, then you add to that the small town politics, who likes who knows who, or who thinks they know who. And so my point is, we started hosting consistently events locally, but then, I decided I needed to grow outside of my local market as well. So we went across the province, which is, by the way, Saskatchewan is twice the size of Texas with a total population of just over 1 million people. So just to paint the picture, it's not densely populated by any means. So we went across the province, and then I ended up partnering with an agent in the neighboring province, Manitoba. And we're doing events there. And so the goal is to host events regularly. And then once you break into a new market, start hosting events in that new market until you have a partner in place that can host events for you. And so right now, just after a little over 3 years now with the company, we've got 127 agents, pretty much all across Canada now. And it's pretty exciting as we're just kind of getting started. We're picking up speed and momentum now, which is a lot of fun. But like that 3 years ago, it was just me and one staff person. So it's come a long way, even though I feel like we're just getting started, but it's really just simple. And same thing, inviting people, one by one. You can send mass emails, you can send mass text messages, but what's important is build a relationship. And I've been doing that through social media, build a relationship through social media. And you can do that by message, but then pick up the phone and invite people to come for a business lunch and present your thoughts and ideas. And as simple as that. There's a lot of different types of events that you could do, but that's kind of the maybe simple way to explain it.
Love it, man. Well, as we get to the end of this, because I got to jump on another podcast, how would people find you? What are the best places for them to find where they can learn all these things that you're doing?
Yeah, you can look me up on YouTube, or you can follow me on Instagram. It's Chris Molinar, and my last name's Molenaar. And send me a message on Instagram, or you can get to know sort of more of what I'm all about there on YouTube too.
I love it, man. Well, Chris, thanks for your time and your stories. It was amazing. And for all of you watching this, make sure you apply some of this knowledge. If you're in a business, go out there and do events. Don't worry about 100 people showing up. Worry about what you're going to do for the ones that do show up, and worry about how you're going to solve the problem, and do that consistently and persistently, and you will have success. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Money School podcast. We'll see you next time.